Hi, welcome to Grow Smart CLT, Saving Charlotte's Tree Canopy, hosted by Sustain Charlotte. We're so happy that you're joining us this evening. We are going to have an amazing program for you tonight, and I'm going to start sharing my screen here and introduce our panelists. But first, I just want to give you a quick rundown on our agenda for tonight. We'll kick it off with some intros, and then we will talk about the context and history of the tree canopy in Charlotte, and then move on to the status of the tree canopy currently. We'll talk about some past approaches to protecting trees, as well as additional solutions that can be implemented. We're then going to have some questions for our expert panel. We're going to have some question and answer time from the audience. And throughout the presentation, you can type your questions into the question and answer box on your screen, and then we'll address as many of those as we can towards the end of the presentation. We'll have a few announcements at the end, and also just please enjoy this event and don't feel that you need to write down all the information, because we'll send you a follow-up email tomorrow with a version of the presentation, and we'll also include a post-event survey that we'd love to get your feedback on. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Dr. Doug Shoemaker is the Director of Research at the Center for Applied GIS at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Lori Collins serves on the Board of Directors for Trees Charlotte. Tim Porter is the Chief Urban Forester for the City of Charlotte. And Councilmember Dimple Ajmera is a council member at large, which means she represents all the people of Charlotte, and she'll be talking about the role of City Council. So I'd now like to turn our presentation over to Lori Collins from Trees Charlotte to share a bit more about the background of Charlotte's tree canopy.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, can folks see me? Okay, so I'm going to just start off by giving a little context and history of the tree canopy goal, when and why it was set, and the current considerations by the City Council to take another look at it. I first got involved in this issue back in 2009 when I was a member of the board of Women's Impact Fund, which is a group of women that raise money each year for a range of local issues. We learned that the city had not been able to measure its tree canopy for a number of years, but money had already been spent to gather aerial data on the tree canopy. And what was needed was somebody to analyze the data before it got too stale. And we were really excited about this opportunity. And the Women's Impact Fund, or 300 or 400 members of the Women's Impact Fund, chose it over all the other environmental grant applications that year. So we gave about $100,000 to ensure the study could be completed. And the study was done in 2010, and it showed that the tree canopy was disappearing faster than trees were being replanted. So, you know, we were concerned. Mecklenburg had lost about 33% of its tree canopy between 1985 and 2008, and a large part of that was due to hurricanes. So this information galvanized the City Council to set the tree canopy goal of 50% tree canopy by 2050. So funding in 2009, the study in 2010, and the goal was set in 2011. And you know, at the time, the canopy coverage was under pressure, but a 50% goal by 2050 seemed aspirational but reasonable at the time. So since the goal was set, the canopy is measured on a regular basis. And most recently, Trees Charlotte commissioned a tree canopy study, and the results that came back were concerning. Charlotte's tree canopy had fallen to about 45% in 2018. That was the most recent data available is 2018. So we're moving in the wrong direction of our 50% goal. So while some parts of Charlotte are gaining trees, we lost almost 10,000 trees, or 10,000 acres of trees from development, age, and storm. You know, a lot of Charlotte's trees were planted all at the same time about 100 years ago, so they're all dying at the same time. And 3 years ago, a consultant estimated that based on our current trajectory, our tree canopy would drop to about 41%, you know, just as we continue to build out as a city. So You may have seen headlines like Charlotte losing 3 football fields of trees daily, or Charlotte lost 8% of its tree canopy between 2012 and 2018. So that's why we're here tonight, to discuss this issue. And due to these results, the city has grown concerned that the tree canopy goal, as it's set, of 50% tree canopy by 2050, may not be the best fit for Charlotte. It may not be feasible. It may not be what the city most needs. So we want to provide information tonight to help you make your own decisions about the tree canopy goal, if that's something you want to commit to as a city and help Charlotte achieve. And just give everyone more information. Spoiler alert, I feel very strongly that the tree canopy goal is worth fighting for, that we need to move from aspirational to operational, and it's something that we can achieve if we all engage in it. I'm going to now turn it over to Doug Shoemaker from UNC Charlotte. He's going to give you more data and information and show you some maps to help illuminate some of these issues. All right, so Doug, handing it off to you.
Thank you so much, Lori. Here, let me see if I can share my screen. So thanks so much to everybody, all the attendees. And I want to say that I'm really grateful for Trees Charlotte inviting me to help interpret this study that was conducted by the University of Vermont Spatial Analysis Lab. So I'm going to talk a bit about the status of the Charlotte Tree Canopy right now, and then we'll take a deeper dive into what the data means so we can kind of understand what's happening on the ground, as it were, and what that means to Charlotteans. So we'll cut right to the chase. As Lori mentioned, this study that looked at the period between 2012 and 2018, the tree canopy in Charlotte, which is pretty much the city limits, which is quite large, declined from 49% to 45%. So this is sort of the wrong direction from what we were hoping when we made that 50 by 50 pledge. Now, the result is nuanced because as we're losing trees, we're also growing new ones. And I'll say right off the bat, Charlotte is a great place to grow trees. We have the right conditions. We have great soils for it. Trees grow very easily here. So during the same period, we gained over 2,000 acres of new forest canopy, urban forest canopy, and it's mostly on the edges as the existing trees expanded their reach. But due to a number of factors that we'll talk about, we lost almost 10,000 acres for a net loss of about 7,669 acres. So how in the world did they do this? Well, let's kind of walk through the case of how they would perform this analysis with new development, or what I would call greenfield development. So we're going to look at a place that's forested in 2010 and 2012, okay? If you take a look, this is in Steel Creek, and there's a subdivision, and there is a big patch of forest there at the edge of it. Well, with the building boom firing up after the end of the Great Recession, we see that a number of new homes were put into that slot, and only a small chunk was left over. So the people at the University of Vermont did this analysis. They looked at the historical satellite imagery and aerial imagery, the new imagery, and did a difference. And here I've gone ahead and colored that difference so it's easy for you to see. In red, we've got loss. So those are all the places where the forest was cut down in order to put in trees. The gray is no change. It's still the existing forest. And then if you look closely, it might be hard to see all along the edges of this area, we see little rims of bright green, and that's where trees grew. So they did this for our entire city, and we were able to come up with those numbers. So So where did this happen? If we look at this little chart now, in this plot, the green on the right-hand side are gains. So that's where the forest grew. And the orange on the other side are losses. And this is where our losses are. And we've had losses outpace gains for commercial and office land uses, for industrial and mining, and as well as for right-of-way. But it's clear that the big consumer is residential, losses in residential areas. And that's why we see this big plot. So let's take a deep dive and characterize what that loss looks like. So 2/3 of the loss that we saw in residential area was of this type: storm damage, natural mortality, either trees aging out or getting sick and dying, or trees removed for public safety concerns. Again, this is about 2/3 of our residential losses. And this looks like this sort of tree damage that if you live in these areas that you're well aware of, and you have to ask, you know, is this associated with climate change? You know, because our storms are getting more frequent, they're the more virulent, and so you have to wonder. And then the other is like I said, it's more like taking a tree down. This tree was over 100-foot tall, and the top half had rotted out and was a danger of falling on buildings, so it was removed. Okay, the other kind of loss, major loss that we see, which accounts for about 1/3 of the residential losses, is greenfield development. And in this case, I'm going to show you some infill development. Now, infill development has different rules about how their tree saves, and I don't think they're as stringent. So let's take a look at this map. And right now we're focused on Cherry. And if we zoom in on this site, the red is losses. These are new developments in Cherry, where they took out lots that were filled with trees and put up houses. And right now, there's not a lot of trees associated with those new builds. Now there's some small ones that'll take a while to grow out. We see the same thing over in Dilworth, where we had a forested lot with an older home that was taken out and a new office building put in, and we lost all those trees. So between those two different types, that accounts for most of our residential losses. So when we wrote an article and published it on the University of North Carolina, Charlotte's Urban Institute site, I did this chart, and it listed all the neighborhoods in Charlotte that had lost 10% canopy or greater. And if you look at this chart, you'll see a lot of these neighborhoods are well known for their trees. They're more affluent. In fact, many of them, the trees are famous: Myers Park, Eastover, Dilworth. Okay, so I wanted to go back and say, this is what the numbers are telling us, but what aren't the numbers telling us? So what is the story behind the story? And dig in a little bit on this issue. So what about those underserved neighborhoods that, that we're concerned about? So using the Vermont data, I went in and did a map of what our total canopy is right now, and well, actually in 2018, which is our latest reporting period. And I was able to come up with this map. In this map, this map is available on a sort of a map-based data dashboard that's available at the following link. I'm sure Meg will put it up in the show notes. Here we have dark blues are areas that have a lot of forest canopy, and the lighter yellows, well, dark blues are generally more than 45%, and yellows are generally 30% and under. And we see some really concerning patterns here in the north end. The tree canopy coverage only runs from about 8% to 30%. We see a similar problem in East Charlotte. And if you're aware of the pattern of the crescent and wedge that the city is often characterized, we see this prominent wedge here coming up from the south and a crescent of underserved communities with, in this case, less forest canopy in the north. So let's take another dive and, so there's our take home, that the underserved communities didn't lose as much canopy as some of the other neighborhoods because they started with less. They didn't have as much to lose. So it made me start to think about issues of equity. So who in Charlotte can walk out their door and enjoy a high degree of tree canopy? So taking that Vermont data, I was able to make a map where if you started any place in our city, any spot in our city, and walked a quarter mile, let's say about 10 minutes in any direction, how much canopy would be over your head? How much shaded area would you have to work with? And that's what this map here is. The darker greens are places that have higher amounts of canopy, typically over 50%. The lighter yellow or see-through areas are areas that we have less canopy. And these neighborhoods in the north, for example, during your walk, you would only 20% of your walk would be shaded. Whereas if you were down in Myers Park, maybe 55% of your walk would be shaded. So this is a way for me to try to understand what this canopy means to the ground. And I hope that maps like this can be useful in trying to target where efforts were. Instead of aggregating something by a zip code or a neighborhood, we can go and get real fine grained about things and find out where people can't get the canopy. Those two maps led to an excellent story by Michael Falero, WFAE, that's talking about how the original canopy study, while very good, the results seem to hide, may be too strong of a word, but it really doesn't feature losses in historically Black neighborhoods. I recommend you go take a read on that if you're interested. Thinking about equity, I have one more map to show you. Thinking about equity made me think about what are the correlations between red lighting and current canopy. You may know that from about the turn of the century, well into the 40s, 1940s, there were groups like the Homeowners Loan Corporation that made maps that helped banks determine what neighborhoods were good ones to invest in and which ones weren't. And if you'll see, here's Charlotte in 1945, and if you take a look, you'll see 4 grades, A, B, C, and D, of neighborhoods. And in each neighborhood grade has a bunch of intergrades that are ranked 1 through, I think, as many as 12. And they talk about the suitability. They also talk about the demographic composition of these areas, with D grade, which are the red or pinkish shades here, being less or more risky than, let's say, the other A's. So through a little GIS magic, we're able to take a map like that historic map and stretch it onto a current map of Charlotte, and we get something that looks like that. And when we intersect it with the walking map, like how much canopy is accessible by residents, we end up with a map that looks like this. It's a little difficult to read, but we definitely see some lighter shades of green in the grade D communities. And it's a little bit clear when we go ahead and chart it all out. On average, A grade communities in 1935 have over 55% tree canopy currently, and the Ds in 1935 currently enjoy only about 28% canopy. Right. Well, I'm going to conclude with that idea, and I hope to come back when we talk, answer some questions on the panel discussion. Thank you.
Hi, so I believe Meg is restarting her internet connection at the moment. So what I can do right now is pick up where she left off. Give me one moment. Oh,
sorry about that, everyone. I'm back. I had some internet connectivity problems here in the office. So thank you so much, Doug. And we are now going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to talk about what the city is doing to support our tree canopy. So I'm going to share my screen and show his slides.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Porter with the City of Charlotte. Very excited to have this opportunity to talk to everyone this evening and be part of this great panel. I'm going to spend my time talking about some of the efforts the city has led, but also partnered with other community folks and programs over the past 10 to 15, 20 years that were high-level policy, management, development, engagement efforts to learn more about our tree canopy, but also manage to help grow and sustain that important natural resource. I'll also spend a few moments talking about our current Tree Canopy Action Plan effort, which is a companion plan to the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which will be a blueprint for how Charlotte grows over the next 20 years. And we'll talk more about the goals of this initiative and the public engagement components. So, we can move on to the next slide. So I just kind of talk through, and so, yeah, thank you. Here we go. So some of the past work, and again, these aren't all city-led, but many of them are. And early on in the 2000s, and Lori kind of touched on this, there was concern over tree canopy in Charlotte, and the city was partnered on two major efforts that looked at tree canopy analysis. And the results of that canopy analyses were quite shocking, as Lori mentioned, that a significant amount of canopy cover declined over a long-term trend. And that sparked a lot of action and concern. And some of the initiatives that were built off of that analysis was a major tree ordinance revision by the city that looked to grow regulatory protection and planting for trees. It brought in an important component called Tree Save to development requirements. The most important initiative, of course, was the adoption of the 50 by 50 City Council goal in 2011. And soon after that, in 2012, we can move on to the next slide. And I think, Laura, I got the timing right. Tree Charlotte was founded around 2012, and the city has enjoyed a great partnership with Tree Charlotte. We've long understood that the majority of tree canopy is not in the public realm, so to speak. It's on private property. And to really target sustainability and growth in tree canopy and preservation, that's where the most of the work needs to take place. So we've been working with Tree Charlotte for ever since to really target that area. In 2014, another canopy analysis was completed. You're seeing a trend here. Canopy analysis is going to be an ongoing big high-level planning tool to know more about our canopy. In 2015, the city implemented a major conservation program called the Tree Canopy Preservation Program. It's become a national model. It's a land conservation program that acquires and protects land for tree canopy preservation purposes in perpetuity. So it's become a model for other major cities such as Atlanta. 2012, there was another tree ordinance revision. And moving forward to the next slide, please. A major initiative in 2017, the Urban Forest Master Plan, which is a blueprint for how, it's a community-driven blueprint for how tree canopy will be managed, sustained, educating, engaging folks on going forward. In 2018, there was an internal work group that looked at some of the questions Lori alluded to. Is 50 by 50 attainable? Is it the right fit? I kind of crammed in Tree Charlotte's canopy analysis there. I'm not trying to take credit. I just wanted to make sure it was highlighted on this timeline because it's a really critical part of the history, but also the future of our tree canopy. And now in 2020, we're working on the Tree Canopy Action Plan. So we can move on. So the Tree Canopy Action Plan is part of the Charlotte Future 2040 plan. And it's really going to be informative for high-level policy, but also it's going to provide regulatory guidance, but also strategic policy for non-regulatory programming. Programs like the Tree Canopy Preservation Program, the city's partnership with Tree Charlotte, planting programs, not just development-driven focused at all. That's the foundation of what it's built on. Next slide. And we're really hoping to have an open, it's time for this, a really open, honest dialogue with the community to talk about tree canopy. Not just a 50 by 50 goal, but definitely that's a big part of this. Other policy areas that are important to focus on, build consensus as much as we can, provide a place for the community to share their opinion, and adjust our policies moving forward. A big component of this is building on the work that was completed as part of the Urban Forest Master Plan. Okay, we can move on. The objectives of the project are we're conducting additional analysis, so you'll see a little bit of similar slides in a moment compared to what Doug did. We really want a community-driven policy, just like the master plan says we should have. We want to move forward with community-driven policies, not just regulatory, but of course, it's really important. The timing of this project coincides with the timing of the comprehensive plan and the Unified Development Ordinance, which will bring all development ordinances together into one document. And it's important that we have the timing right for this project to coincide with those other two initiatives. And of course, there'll be a final report for the Tree Canopy Action Plan. We also call it TCAP. We have a stakeholder group with about 22 to 25 representatives from multiple perspectives from the community, advocacy groups, development community, neighborhood groups, and so on. And their role is to really share their opinions and help guide policy development for this project. You can move on to the next slide. So at our first meeting, to kind of kick off this open, honest dialogue, we asked that stakeholder group, what do you think about 50 by 50? Should we keep it as it is? Should we revise it, keep some key elements, but add to it? Retire it and develop a new goal, or do you need more information? So about a quarter of the stakeholder group said, I need more information. Another quarter said it's time to develop a new goal with new focus areas. The majority said, let's keep the current goal in part and add to it in areas that we really need. And then a smaller percentage said, keep the goal as is. Now, this is just the initial temperature check on what the stakeholder group thought. So next slide, please. So moving on to our additional canopy analysis, and I'm really excited to see more of Doug's work. And I've been talking to Doug, and hopefully we can partner moving forward. I think a lot of what you're going to hear tonight and a lot of the analysis that both entities are working on and your opinions are really going to form the policies that shape how our canopy moves forward and sustains and grows. These are the key areas that we're looking at. I think the first three bullets are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. The last bullet is place types, and that's if you're not a planner like me, place types is a type of designation like land use or zoning that's going to provide contextual guidance in how development is required to build and fit the desired context of our cities. So place types will range from neighborhood to commercial to innovative and things like that. So we can move on. I have a couple slides here that I'm going to run through really quickly just to kind of show you some analysis areas we're looking at. So water quality. Charlotte's divided into two major watersheds with sub-watersheds and catchments in there. And this is very similar to what Doug showed you. The orange is canopy loss. And at the bottom, you see the units, hundreds of acres. The green is growth. So this is an area that we're looking at. Maybe there's some action needed in policy around this. Next slide, please. Continuing on with water quality, this is a table. There's dozens of tables. We've been working with a consultant called the Center for Watershed Protection. They're doing a lot of this analysis. We're looking at the types of post-construction buffers. These are buffers along creeks and streams that protect the stream and the water quality in that stream. And there's some canopy analysis for those areas as well. Next slide, please. I think you saw this very same slide earlier. This is a canopy loss by neighborhood. And those neighborhoods are what we call NPAs, or neighborhood profile areas. They're connected to census designations. The orange or darker red is canopy loss, and you can see a similar area to what Doug referred to in South Charlotte. More canopy loss there. Also, there's higher canopy existing there. In the Crescent area, there was less canopy loss, but I think that relates to they were starting with less canopy. Next slide, please. So equity is a key area, and this is an analysis that looks at how far away are these neighborhoods, these NPA areas, from the 50 by 50 goal. The orange and dark reds are negative or below 50%. It's a little bit difficult. My labeling wasn't the best. I apologize for that. The green colors indicate neighborhoods that are above 50%, within those ranges. So that's an equity assessment there that'll be very helpful. Moving on to the next slide. Equity is just not in canopy access and availability. It's also in public service. So this shows how many tree planting requests were received by the city in those neighborhood areas per 1,000 people. So we have some work to do in engaging neighborhoods around tree canopy maintenance and public service. Next slide, please. I think you saw the exact same slide earlier from Doug. We're looking at the reasons why canopy is declining too. And this just indicates some of those key land use areas. Next slide. We're also looking in what Doug alluded to earlier as well, is what aren't we seeing from the data? And we need to look more closely into single family development areas, infill, that the city doesn't regulate. So that orange blobs there, that indicates canopy loss. The yellow dots are building permits from Mecklenburg County. The city doesn't regulate that type of permitting system. So infill development is not something we currently really review for trees. So that may be an area we want to focus on more. We're also looking at city tree canopy maintenance work to see if there's a correlation between canopy loss. Next slide, please. And I want to finish on the most important part of the TCAP project, the Tree Canopy Action Plan project. The most important part of this is the public engagement. So we went live with our public survey last Thursday. We've already received hundreds of responses. Really excited about that, but we need more. We need folks all over the city to visit publicinput.com/trees to provide their opinions and values on how they want to see their tree canopy managed in the future. We're also going to have a large Q&A session later, well, October 1st, maybe a second one later in October. So we really want to drive folks to this website, and I'm happy to take questions later on or offline about how we can connect to your neighborhood. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that very comprehensive review of what the City of Charlotte is doing to support our tree canopy. And we will be including that link to the public survey in the follow-up email tomorrow. I also want to mention that Sustain Charlotte's Bike and Walk Program Coordinator Eric Zaverl serves on that Tree Canopy Action Plan stakeholder group that Tim was talking about. So we definitely understand the value and importance of coordinating land use planning as part of the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan with the work that's being done on the Tree Canopy Action Plan. So Tim, thank you for your work as the city's chief arborist and for joining us tonight to give us a very detailed explanation of how that process is working. So now I'd like to turn it back to Lori Collins from the Tree Charlotte Board of Directors to talk a little bit more about what Tree Charlotte has done and is doing to support the tree canopy here in Charlotte.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I had an echo. All right, well, first of all, one of the biggest community initiatives to protect the trees has been the formation of the Trees Charlotte nonprofit. It started off as a foundation. It's now a full-blown nonprofit. And I thought I would just give a little background on that. Tim mentioned that we were formed in 2012 and we started raising money and planting trees in 2013. And I wanted to just give a little background on that. So between what was happening with the city and the Women's Impact Fund, there was a growing interest in the trees. And then we also approached the Knight Foundation and sold them on the benefit of trees, essentially, and asked for their support. They provided the seed money for Tree Charlotte. So I thought I would just remind everyone of all the benefits of trees, as you can see here. And this is why we are able to get the funding for Tree Charlotte and have been able to raise money to plant as many trees as we have. I'm just going to kind of run through all of these benefits because I think sometimes it's easy to think, oh, trees are nice, they're pretty, but there are a lot of substantial benefits to the trees. So I'm just going to sort of run through this. On the economic side, Charlotte trees provide about $335 million in benefits per year, and that is from the city's website. A lot of that comes in improved property values, which obviously then gets into an equity issue. If some property have trees and it enhances their property values, and other areas don't. But you know, the trees also attract people to Charlotte. It's one of the reasons people want to live in Charlotte and do business here. It's a beautiful city. So then there's also health issues. There's a lot of health benefits to trees. They improve, they filter the air, they can reduce asthma. There's lots of studies that have been done. I've cited here on my slide a study that has been done that has documented a number of these benefits, such as mitigating the risk of heat stroke, reducing obesity, improving mental health by reducing stress and anxiety and elevating mood, improve birth outcomes, improve immune systems. I mean, there's very substantial health benefits. There's obviously the environmental benefits. They provide shade to reduce heat, and the heat island effect, where there's, you know, heat island is where there's, you know, a lot of asphalt and it just soaks up the heat. They improve water quality by mitigating soil erosion and runoff into the stream beds. They provide wildlife habitat, and they serve as a carbon sink to sequester carbon dioxide and take the carbon dioxide out of the air, which obviously reduces our city's carbon footprint. And then just general quality of life. I mean, the trees provide beauty, they improve social cohesion, they've been known to reduce crime, that's in the study. They obviously support active living, and they really distinguish our city. They're our unique feature. Charlotte doesn't have mountains, we don't have a body of water running through, you know, a river or ocean. I mean, we are the city of trees. It's what distinguishes us from being, you know, an asphalt. So it's important to our brand. So these are all the reasons that we've been able to gain support for Tree Charlotte. And you can go to the next slide, Meg. And so what has Charlotte accomplished since go ahead and go to the next slide. So what has Tree Charlotte has been able to accomplish? So since we started actually planting trees in 2013, we've planted over 37,000 trees. We've worked with 18,000 volunteers all over the city. We've also given away 41,000 seedlings for people to plant on their own. And as you can see here, a lot of the trees have been planted on public property, primarily schools, where we've been able to partner with the city and the county. And then you can also see faith campuses and parks and housing projects. But a big chunk is the Neighborhoods project, where we partner with various neighborhoods. And I'll talk a little bit about that program. I mean, in those cases, we raise money either through our general fundraising or we get sponsors. So the trees are covered, and we work with the neighborhoods to actually get them in the ground and follow through on stewardship. So we identify what communities are interested. They raise their hand, they let us know. We work with different community groups. We've also partnered with the city's housing and neighborhood services to identify neighborhoods that may be interested. They're underserved in terms of the number of trees that they have on their property. We've partnered with, or we continue to partner with the county health department you can stay on that slide, to identify underserved areas. And then we've also increased our application cycle so that it's always open to apply for a Neighborhoods grant. And then Tree Charlotte actually goes out to the neighborhood and looks at the area to get a sense of what type of trees should be planted, how many. So these are some of the things that we have done, and we really need the community to help us with doing more on private property. The vast majority, over 80% of Charlotte's tree canopy is on private property. So it's really there that we will win or lose the battle to save the trees and expand the tree canopy. The city and the county don't assist with efforts to plant or maintain trees on private property, which makes sense. So it's really critical to expand our efforts to reach out to the community to get your ideas about more ways to engage private property owners. And when people plant on their private property, of course, they get the benefit, but it helps the whole community for generations. So we really want this to work for all Charlotteans. So I wanted to get into a little bit of information on why it's so important, why the equity issues are so important. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Doug and Tim gave a lot of information on how we are looking at underserved neighborhoods, the history of redline neighborhoods that have a lot fewer trees, which hurts their property values, of course. But I also want to look at some of the environmental issues. I've cited 3 studies on this slide where it's been identified. This is a nationwide issue, a nationwide studies. Neighborhoods within the same city, neighborhoods that are nice and leafy versus the ones that are barren, there's a 20-degree difference in heat. So the areas within the same city that have less trees or almost no trees compared to the most can be 20 degrees hotter. And so that directly correlates with their cooling cost. So in those neighborhoods, the cooling cost can be as much as 47% higher to run their air conditioning to cool their house. So obviously those areas end up having to spend a lot more on their utility bills, which gets into an issue called energy burden. In North Carolina, over 600,000 people pay 20% or more of their income on their power bill. So these are obviously going to be lower income people to start with, and they're spending 20%, 30% of their small income on their power bill. So the trees also impact that. In Mecklenburg County, about 23,000 homes are spending an average of 27% of their income on their power bill. And the national target, what is considered a reasonable amount to spend, is about 6%. So think about in your own life, if you were spending 20 or 30% of your income on your power bill. So this is something that is not as well known, and I just wanted to bring some attention to this because this is an equity issue, it's an economic issue in our community. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'm just going to go back to the benefits of trees. We don't need to wait necessarily for stronger environmental protections and planning ordinances or more rules for the developers. There's things that we can do today, and that's part of why we wanted to reach out to this community to help galvanize interest around, while we're working with the city, what other things can we do today to really get real with this goal of enhancing our tree canopy and move from aspirational to operational. I stole that term from Doug. And one of the things, a couple of things. One is with planting trees, we can't just go into a neighborhood and identify this neighborhood only has 8% tree canopy and just start planting trees. I mean, we really have to engage the communities. And frankly, they may have other things on their mind, and they may have concerns about housing, food insecurity. There may be other things that are a priority day to day. So we need to help engage folks in understanding all the benefits they can get from working with us on planting trees in those areas. We also hear that there are maintenance issues. There's concern that, okay, we're going to plant these trees, but the neighborhood kids are just going to tear them up, or they're not going to, or we can't afford to water them, or how we're going to maintain them as far as pruning and just general tree maintenance. But those really don't seem like insurmountable issues. They seem like blocking and tackling that as a community, we could work together to get those issues resolved, whether it's the city. I mean, the city's probably not going to go on private property, but there could be community groups, churches, nonprofits. Potentially, we can reach out to the major tree companies to partner with them to adopt a neighborhood each year that, this neighborhood's going to get, full tree pruning that's needed. So, I believe that it's a manageable, these are manageable barriers, and our tree canopy is on the table, and we need to decide what kind of city do we want to be. We're lucky that 100 years ago, there was the foresight to plant all these trees in Charlotte to create such a beautiful city. And I'm lucky to live in one of the neighborhoods. It's very leafy, and yes, it keeps my power bill down. So we really need to think about how to engage. And I know we may get to this I mean, I think we need to understand what the 50 by 50 goal is. And I think I've got 2 minutes, so I'll go ahead and say this. You know, there's a lot of discussion around how to set that goal. But, you know I feel strongly that just to say we're going to have 50 activities doesn't get us to where we need to be. You know, I think this is something that we need to really drill into, look at what it would take, run some scenarios, and see what it would take to achieve the goal. So I'll send it back to Meg because I know she wants time to engage some other folks. And I think I might have one more second to talk later in the discussion.
Thanks, Laura. Do you want to talk about the tree store now or in the announcements?
Oh, sure, you can do it in the announcement. Well, I'll just go ahead and say it now. I think I've got a minute. So we do have a tree store, which is something that we run on a regular basis. We have 13 tree stores on the calendar. There's a couple coming up. So Friday, September 25th is a first timers tree store. So if you've never gotten a tree from Tree Charlotte before, here's your chance. These are all free trees. And then there's another September 26th. So this is one of the things that we do as a community. And the Women's Impact Fund, which is the group I mentioned earlier that provided the original funding for the tree canopy analysis 10 years ago, we partnered again with the Women's Impact Fund, and they are the sponsor. So all these trees are free. So please take advantage.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori, for sharing the fantastic work of Tree Charlotte to plant trees. And the importance of getting trees planted and maintained on private property is really critical, as we've seen. It's also very critical that we have the right policy in place, of course, that will support the kind of land use that will protect our tree canopy. So it's going to be that management of trees on private property coupled with the right policy and laws to keep our trees protected. So thank you so much for your perspective. I would now like to turn things over to Council Member Dimple Ajmera. She's been a fierce advocate for the environment, and we're very happy to have her in support of Charlotte's Tree Canopy. Councilmember Ajmera, could you share with us from your perspective, what is the important role that the city of Charlotte and especially the city council plays in protecting our tree canopy? Of course, we have a city council that is voted for every 2 years. So there's pretty high turnover among city council, and yet council plays a critical role in protecting the tree canopy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meg. Well, number of things city council can do. Number one is listening to feedback from the survey. So it's so important, as Tim had mentioned earlier, it is so important for you all to take the survey and provide us feedback that will guide us in terms of our policies and our tree canopy action plan. Second is to really support organizations that are planting, that are doing the work. For an example, Tree Charlotte has been a great advocate for planting efforts. As Laurie mentioned earlier, they have done an amazing job partnering with various organizations, neighborhoods to mitigate the loss that we are seeing. And Laurie mentioned something that really stuck with me. She had mentioned we are losing 3 football fields of trees daily. So that means if 150,000 single family homeowners, if they were to plant 1 new tree on their property every year, that's enough to mitigate the loss and grow our economy. I mean, grow our canopy and economy. So if this is done annually, we can certainly mitigate the loss in 30 years. And city council has to support the planting effort and organizations like Tree Charlotte, but then also Sustain Charlotte, who is really helping us with the educational efforts, helping us with the outreach to ensure that we can continue to mitigate the loss and grow our canopy. Well, we all know the benefits of tree canopy. Laurie did a great job walking us through all the benefits that tree canopy offers. Well, most importantly, it saves a fortune on sunscreen. But really, that's about it. Listening to the feedback and survey's response that will be coming in front of us in October. And I'm looking forward to reviewing that with our staff, Tim Porter, who is our city arborist, and looking forward to supporting organizations in their planting efforts.
Thank you so much, Dimple. And I will second the saving on sunscreen. I have a big old pecan tree that covers half of my house. And even though it drops pecans and sap and pollen all over my house, it definitely stays cooler on that side of the home. And I don't need sunscreen when I sit under it. So thank you so much for your work supporting the tree canopy and for explaining the important role of tree plantings and education and the support of policy that protects our tree canopy. So now I would like to spend some time talking with our expert panel about what they think are the most important things that we can all do to change the declining trend in Charlotte's tree canopy. So you're all here this evening, presumably because you love trees, and there are tangible things that each of us can do to be a champion for the tree canopy. So I'd like to start with Lori, and then we'll go to Tim and Doug. And if Councilmember Ajmera has anything else to add, she's welcome to also share more.
Well, I would say the first thing, I'm just echoing what Dimple has said, is to fill out the survey and to let your city council know that this is important to you. Because, I mean, our elected officials, they respond to what they hear from the community. And if what they hear is all around housing, crime, and education, that's what they're going to be the three top focuses. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, but we have to raise this as an issue. And in my opinion, the trees can help address a number of these issues. I feel like we should be partnering with affordable housing groups. We have started partnering with Habitat for Humanity and at Tree Charlotte, but we should be tying the trees to these other priorities within the city, whether it's affordable housing, crime, education, but mostly we really need you all to promote this and to make sure that our elected officials are hearing how important this is to us as a city. This can make Charlotte, a destination city. Because of the pandemic, folks are reconsidering where they want to live. And Charlotte has a great opportunity to be a destination. But if we don't stay on top of this issue, we will lose something that's really distinguishing to Charlotte. This is what makes us a beautiful city. And we don't want to get to the point where we're like Los Angeles, which was at 120 degrees recently. I mean, the trees really help protect us from becoming like overly hot and a sort of a barren city. So there's the positive, but there's also the risk avoidance. And one other point I want to make is that I know I'm personally concerned about this slipping towards talking about we want a 50 themed goal, like replanting at least 50% of the trees or holding 50 outreach programs. I mean, to me, that is really hijacking our goal. And I kind of liken it to the idea if you were running a business and you had a goal to hit 1 million in earnings next year, would you be satisfied if you were just going to have 1 million activities instead of having a $1 million revenue? I mean, it's just not the same. It's not how people set real goals. I understand the idea that we need to have some sub goals and look at some other issues underneath that 50% goal. So of course we have milestones, we'll have pillars to get there. We'll take into account watersheds and equity, but it's in my view, we need to have that overarching motivational goal. I mean, you set big goals to galvanize action. It's, a big, hairy, audacious goal is what galvanizes innovative thinking and action. So I hope that you all will join us in supporting these goals and speak out.
Thank you, Lori, for that perspective. Tim, could you share your suggestion for what folks can do to support the tree canopy?
Absolutely. Again, I'm going to plug the survey, publicinput.com/trees. Please give us your input. I also think collectively, I mentioned community driven many times, and that's something the city strongly believes in. I personally and professionally believe in that. I think all interested stakeholders need to step up, and we need more resources. And that's not just funding. Of course, money always helps, but it's every type of resource. It's staff time, it's volunteering. And I think we need to look at our idea for a canopy team. Our canopy team is an action item from the Urban Forest Master Plan that says we have to create, we being the community, it's not just a city thing. That plan's supposed to be community driven. We need to create a landing spot for community stakeholders, your average individual advocate or your corporate partner, the city, Tree Charlotte, every stakeholder can be part of this coalition to help champion this interest area. Because the city is not going to regulate or plant or preserve, educate our way to 50 by 50. We're not going to be able to do that just partnering the same way we do now with Tree Charlotte. We need everyone to kind of collaborate a little bit more and step up and push forward. I also, just real quickly, I agree with some of Lori's thoughts on the 50 themed goals. That was a concept that the internal work team from a couple years ago in the city was tossing around, and I can confirm we have moved off of that, Lori. So we're not thinking of trying to keep the name and come up with a cute set of little 50 themed initiatives. But we are looking at whether this goal is the right fit, and there's been no decision made. We're concerned about if it's attainable, but we also aren't saying we're going to retire it. We want to know. I think it's very possible we may keep it. I believe strongly we need to add to it. Things like equity, things like inclusiveness. We can do much better at that collectively. And I think at minimum, we need to add to that goal. And I want to say thank you to Sustain Charlotte, to everyone on the call tonight. And I look forward to working with everybody going forward to create new policies and then implement it. That's the fun part.
Thank you, thank you, Tim, so much for your description of what the city is working on. We're grateful for the work that you're doing. And Doug, we would love to hear from you about your thoughts on protecting the tree canopy.
So the first thing I think we need to all acknowledge is that there's no silver bullet. The reason that we're losing trees are manifold. There's a bunch of different reasons and they interact, and that's not easy to deal with as we're finding out. So I think that we need a series of strategic goals. And the first thing I think we need to do is we need to make sure that the city is doing everything that they can do to enforce the rules that they have in place already. We've got some of the most advanced ordinances in the United States, certainly in our state. And are they being followed? Are mitigations being followed through with? It's difficult work. It requires people, and people are short, but that's the low-hanging fruit. Second, we need to plant trees like our lives depended on it, because our lives may depend on this with climate change. You see the problems that we're having in California. It's unbelievable. And when we come to those places, I mean, we talk to the people in the North End and they don't necessarily want trees. They've got a list of 99 problems that are more important than having a tree in their yard or in their way, maybe, right? But all these people, if you ask them what they want their Charlotte to look like in 25 years, they want trees, they want walkable neighborhoods, they want the cleanest environment that they can do. They have outrageous rates of asthma and obesity in those neighborhoods. We can bring that back. Third thing is we need to make a business case for canopy in Charlotte. Until I think it's unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to come up with one-sided unilateral ordinances that solve this problem. I think we need to get the business community, and particularly the realtors and the real estate community, to get behind the same goals that the rest of us want. If they decide that, hey, we believe in this and we'll help you get there, we stand a much better chance of ever having to do it, as long as they're on the other side and not with us on this. It'll be a problem, and we can't expect the sort of change that we really need in order to bring this thing back.
Thank you so much, Doug. Councilmember Ajmera, do you have any final thoughts on how people can get involved with letting their city council members know about the importance of the tree canopy, or any other thoughts that you have on protecting the tree canopy.
Absolutely. So the way I see us meeting our tree canopy goal is planting and preserving. Really, there are two buckets, planting and preserving. So while City Council continues to support organizations like Tree Charlotte and Sustain Charlotte and other organizations that does the work in terms of planting and education, we got to continue to do that to mitigate the loss. But then we also got to ensure that we are working to preserve existing tree canopy. So how do we preserve existing tree canopy? Where we can take, where we have done consistently, and Tim had mentioned this earlier, we have a very robust tree preservation program, tree canopy preservation program. It's a model for other cities. So we got to continue to strengthen that program and maybe even expand that to ensure that we can preserve 1-per-1 loss. Other is to collaborate with organizations. I saw on the chat we have a soil and water supervisor here, Nancy Carter and Barbara Bleiweiss. They have been doing great work as well. So we got to continue to partner with them to ensure that we can mitigate the loss, do educational event, but at the same time, really collaborate with those organizations, because city cannot do this alone. We need community behind this goal. And that is so, I cannot emphasize that enough. Doug mentioned about equity, and he drew correlation, and he talked about the correlation between the equity and tree canopy. So where we have, I mean, the question comes to mind is who can walk out of their home and enjoy the tree canopy? Well, not all Charlotteans, especially not in all parts of our city. So we really got to tie this conversation from just tree canopy to actual conversation about environment justice and equity discussion, because this is a matter of equity and environment justice. So as long as we continue down that path, I think we can achieve or we can mitigate loss and grow our tree canopy from aspirational to operational. I think Doug had mentioned that earlier, or Laurie had mentioned it. I think I love that, aspirational to operational. So I can't wait to see your feedback where you ask us to strengthen our regulations so that we can grow our tree canopy and mitigate the loss. Well, thank you all so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ajmera. We heard so many fantastic ideas from our panelists tonight about ways that everyone can support the tree canopy, both at an individual level and in terms of supporting policy and tree planting and preservation. We are now going to transition to our question and answers. And Mary Catherine Freeman here at Sustain Charlotte has been monitoring the question and answer box. We know we won't be able to get to all of the questions because y'all are so passionate that there are a lot of questions in the Q&A box in the chat, but we will share copies of all of the questions and the comments with our panelists so they will know the type of input and the types of questions that you all have as they continue their work. So Mary Catherine, could you read our first question, please?
Unmute, Mary.
Guys, I am so sorry. Excuse me. Just wanted to say thank you guys for sticking with us, and that I am so blown away by all of the incredible questions that people have asked throughout this webinar, and it's just been really encouraging to hear from so many of you. First things first, I just want to jump in and actually address a question that was asked before the webinar even started. We had somebody reach out to us. This is a question that's probably best for Tim or Dimple. The vast majority of Charlotte's tree canopy is on private property, and it is there that we will win or lose the battle to save, much less expand it. The city and county, as I understand it, do not assist in efforts to plant or maintain trees on private property. So most by definition, they are fighting a losing battle if only focusing on publicly owned property. Couldn't the government use tax policy to, in effect, get private citizens to do the work it cannot do itself? And why not make this part of the effort to boost social justice in Charlotte? For example, provide tax credit or tree credits like carbon credits for tree planting and maintenance in lower income or underserved neighborhoods, or perhaps providing actual cash to those citizens to pay for tree maintenance with participating arborist firms who might also receive tax incentives to help underserved neighborhoods. It's a big question. Please let me know if you guys need me to clarify in any way.
That's a really big question. Hey everyone, Tim Porter here. So I'll start closer to the bottom of that question. The tax thing, the incentive thing for property owners, that's something we're discussing in this TCAP project. I'm not sure of the legal realities around that. There may be some challenges, but it's something that's getting attention, and it certainly is something the stakeholders are talking about. The city of Charlotte does engage in significant efforts on private property. I can't speak for Mecklenburg County. I think there's always room to improve. The city has been long aware that the tree canopy goal won't be accomplished, whatever it is, without really putting an effort in on private property. That's where the vast majority is. We've heard that numerous times tonight. And some of the efforts the city takes on to target that is providing significant support to Tree Charlotte, both indirect and indirect support. We also have the Tree Canopy Preservation Program that's acquired almost 300 acres of land. So it's now publicly owned land, but at some point it wasn't. And we've acquired and protected that under conservation easements in the past 5 years. And another way the city, this is an indirect approach, but another way the city helps shape canopy cover on private property is through our development requirements. And that's a big part of the Tree Canopy Action Plan, is to look at how we need to revise and create new or tweak existing development regulations and possibly non-development regulations to provide the required amount that the community wants to see of canopy per development project. So that's a long answer to a much longer question. I'm not sure if I could touch on all of those items, and I want to give Councilmember Ajmera an opportunity as well.
Thank you, Tim. So I would only like to add one thing. So we have had that incentive question have come up multiple times, as Tim had mentioned. Staff is looking at that. I have also advocated for how do we get 1-per-1 tree planting going, or at least saving. So currently, for our tree preservation program, the challenge is that when we are getting funds from developers, we are not able to replace all the tree canopy that we are losing. Especially, we are having to buy land somewhere else, and when we are getting money from developers, those dollars are based on the assessed value, not necessarily the market value. And so we are not able to really mitigate the loss. And I know that's something staff is looking at. But again, I would like you all to also provide feedback on how you would like us to strengthen our regulations. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Ajmera. Next question. So we have a question from Ron, would you like serious consideration for increased tree canopy along highways and freeways that negatively impact urban communities due to emissions and pollution? Thoughts on this being a priority?
I'm happy to take that unless somebody else wants to jump on that. I think it's a great idea. It's a great focus area. And that effort is something we're talking a lot about. What I mean is coordinating with the North Carolina Department of Transportation, the state of North Carolina, because they have the authority over highways, freeways, you know, the major highways in the Charlotte area. And those roads are a major source of noise pollution, but also air pollution. And trees can go directly to helping reduce the noise. They're not going to be a sound wall that completely removes it, but they also can really knock down particulate matter, you know, air pollution, little tiny fine particles that get into the air. So that is a component that's getting a lot of discussion in the current tree canopy action plan. And there may be some policies that come out of that directly targeting working with NCDOT on issues like what Mr. Ross mentioned.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so here I have 3 questions that one of our panelists has asked. Number 1, how can we adopt a tree ordinance that is as strict as Hilton Head's, where it is easier to rob a bank than cut down a tree? Number 2, or if you guys want to answer that, go for it, and then I can ask the next question. Or I can go ahead and ask the next question. Number 2, how can we grow many pocket parks throughout the city? And number 3, can we at Tree Charlotte plant more oaks and maples that give a larger canopy per tree?
I'll just try to take a crack at the 3rd question that it was directed at Tree Charlotte. I'm on the board. I'm not the executive director, so I'm not quite as close to the details, but we do look closely at what types of trees are being planted. And we have actually, well, Chuck Cole is on the phone, but I don't know if he can be unmuted, but we do look at diversity. So we don't want to have all oaks. You know, we look at what is the right tree for that area. So we are a little bit more aware of biodiversity than we have been in the past, because one of the things that we see happening in Charlotte is all these oak trees are planted at the same time and they're all dying at the same time. So if there's more diversity, that helps with, you know, that just, you know, helps sustain the tree canopy. So that doesn't exactly answer your question, but just that we do, it looks like Chuck may be answering it in the chat box, so that he probably can give a better answer on that one.
Chuck is saying diversity is the key in Tree Charlotte plantings. We try to avoid monoculture. And yeah, that's kind of his answer to that question. Does anybody else have anything else to weigh in on that?
So Tim Porter again. The first question, the best way that you can have your voice heard to adopt stricter tree ordinance provisions is to participate in the TCAP project and visit publicinput.com/trees. The best way to move policy forward is to make sure that your representatives, the stakeholder processes, public engagement opportunities hear your voice. So moving policy forward in the direction you want to see it takes a lot of influence, sometimes pressure, and when your voice is heard on multiple different platforms, that definitely provides support and justification, because all these ordinance efforts have to take a look at balancing all the other interests in the community: affordable housing, public health, equity, et cetera. There's a long list there, and trees are on the list, which is great because in some cities they're not. But the best way that you can be heard to help push an ordinance towards a stronger protection and planting requirements is to really continually make your voice heard. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to justify the creation of a canopy team, which would be a coalition of multiple different stakeholders.
Fantastic.
I
Mary,
might chime
go for
in on the question of, I'm sorry, Dimple.
go ahead, Doug.
Okay, I'll make it quick. The question of diversity in the tree canopy, we not only need diversity in species, but we need diversity of age. So right now, if you're listening to this and you have a bunch of very beautiful, massive trees in your yard and you don't have any mid-story trees to take their place when they age out, that's a concern, all right? So let's do that. And I also, while I'm a big proponent of native trees, there are certain cases where non-natives do a better job, particularly in very pollution-prone areas. So I think that natives is good, and the city already does what it can when it's available, but I don't think we should count out non-natives because they have their place in a strategy. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ajmera, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Tim had mentioned earlier. The survey is very important, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Please take the survey if you have not, but then also encourage your friends and family who are passionate about our tree canopy to take the survey. Also, other item I would suggest is speaking at public forum. If you haven't done that, it's very simple. You just go on City of Charlotte website and sign up to speak at the forum closer to when decisions are being made, so that your voice is heard, and not just through survey, but also directly by speaking at the public forum. You can also write editorials linking the benefits of tree canopy to really enabling equity and environment justice. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a quick question, and then there's one question I really want us to get to before we close out with our question and answer time. We have somebody that has just moved, who's an arborist, who's just moved to North Carolina from the Tampa Bay area, and he's asking if someone could post a link that directs him to the city's tree ordinance. So kind of back to what you were talking about there, Doug, I think.
We can certainly include that in the follow-up email that will go out to all of the attendees tomorrow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Or I think Tim might have actually just done it for us. Maybe. Okay. This is going to be our last question, and it's from our very own executive director here at Sustain Charlotte, Shannon Benz. For each panelist, what is the single most important thing that you think must be done to address the loss of our tree canopy?
So I'll go first. Planting is very important. If you're thinking about giving gifts to someone, give a gift of tree. And I've done that. We try to plant one tree every year. So you can get tree seedlings from Tree Charlotte or from other stores and plant trees. It is just so important that we do our part in mitigating the loss and helping Charlotte grow our tree canopy.
I can go next. This is Lori. Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lori.
Okay, sorry, it was confusing. I think the most important thing is to encourage everyone to commit to a big, ambitious goal. And the reason I say that is that maybe just from my business career, when you have a big, ambitious goal, that's what galvanizes action. And that is what makes people think differently and be innovative. And until you have that goal to motivate people, it all feels like blocking and tackling, and it just doesn't get the engagement. If you have an ambitious goal that you feel like is going to set up Charlotte for the next 30 years to be a beautiful, vibrant, healthy city, and it's going to protect us from what we see happening on the West Coast with climate change, then everything falls out of that. Everything falls from that. Then we will figure out that the way to get to that goal is to have more equity, to look at the neighborhoods that only have 8% tree canopy, so we can address all these issues around equity and affordable housing and climate and energy burden. they can all be addressed. That's the pillars under the goal. But I really encourage everyone to commit to an ambitious goal and to motivate your elected officials to commit to the goal. If the elected officials hear it from the citizens of Charlotte, they'll do it. I mean, that's why they're in their roles, is to respond to the constituents. So go for it.
So Shannon, I always dislike the question, what's the one thing? But I do have an answer for this one, and that's take a friend who doesn't understand trees out for a coffee or a lunch under some trees, okay? You know, you only save what you love. And there's so many of us that are stuck in offices and stuck in cars, well, not so much these days, and stuck in the house. And they don't realize that we have this extraordinary resource right around us. And they're kind of, it gets lost in the background. So take a moment, a quiet moment, enjoy a conversation with somebody who's not there with us, and have them learn to love trees.
I love that. That's great, Doug. Thank you so much.
I would add, there's so many things to choose from. And I think, in my mind, echoing Lori and Doug's sentiment, that I think awareness is the most important thing. And that comes about when there's value, and it connects to a call to action, which big, robust tree canopy goal can do. 50 by 50 had two main components. It's still there, and the components are the same. The first one, of course, is attain 50% canopy coverage. The second component is to have this bold, realistic goal be a call to action that increases awareness and activity around trees and tree canopy. And that's been very successful. And I think we need to keep that in mind moving forward. Whatever the future canopy goal is we need to keep focusing on awareness, because awareness will support all those other important areas of preservation, planting, regulatory policy, stronger protections and ordinances, love for trees. So awareness would be my answer.
Absolutely. I love that, Tim. You know, the more we know, the better we can do. So on that note, I'm going to pass it back off to Meg. And I know that there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to today, and we will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow, and we'll try to have some of those questions answered for you guys. But just really appreciate everyone engaging and participating in this time of questions and answers. So
Mary Catherine, thank you for moderating our Q&A. And wherever you are watching this event, please, even though we can't see you, give a big round of applause to our amazing panelists. We're so grateful to the work that Trees Charlotte and the Charlotte City Council, as well as staff and UNC Charlotte, all of these organizations are coming together to support our tree canopy. And we also know that many of you as individuals and organizations that you are affiliated with and neighborhoods are also important parts of that puzzle. So hopefully this event has better informed you about some of the challenges that Charlotte's tree canopy is facing, and a deeper valuation of the benefits of our tree canopy, as well as some very specific strategies and tactics that you can help undertake to support the tree canopy. We just have a few final announcements from Sustain Charlotte. And I want to remind you that the tree canopy survey, as well as the tree store by Trees Charlotte, will be shared with you in a follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow. I also want to let you know about a really important survey that is being done right now by the Charlotte Moves Task Force. The Charlotte Moves Task Force was convened by former Mayor Harvey Gantt, along with our current Mayor, Vi Lyles, to meet over the coming months. They've been meeting for several months now, and they're really working to define a comprehensive package of mobility projects, transportation projects that will move Charlotte into the next generation and improve equity and connectivity and safety on our streets and beyond. And they really need to hear from you. They need to hear from all parts of Charlotte. So please, when you get this email tomorrow from me about the follow-up to this event, be sure to click on the link in that to take the Charlotte Move survey and let them know what you value in terms of transportation and mobility needs for the city. I also want to let you know about a really exciting Sustain Charlotte event that's coming up. It's an event that we've been doing for years now. And this year is going to be looking a little bit different because of COVID-19. So it will be a virtual event, but I'm sure people will be out there riding, and you'll see some other cyclists out there. And when I say cyclists, we really mean everyone. So this is not the bike ride where you have to put on your spandex and get your expensive road bike out. This is for people who have not ridden a bike in a while, all the way up to the experts. It's family friendly. We have some suggested routes that you may want to try, or you can choose your own adventure from within your own neighborhood. We'll have some event details coming next week. This link again will be in your follow-up email, sustaincharlotte.org/Biketoberfest. So mark off that weekend of October 24th and 25th. There's no specific set time for it, but we will have some fun ways of engaging with the other participants in Biketoberfest with a bingo card where you'll mark off some different destinations that you go to. We also have another fantastic event scheduled for October 7th, so 3 Wednesdays from now. 5 to 6 p.m. We will be talking with Jason Lawrence and Bruce Jones, who are transit planners at the Charlotte Area Transit System, better known as CATS. And really exciting changes are coming to Central Avenue within the next month or so. And the part of it that is between the former Eastland Mall site and Eastway Drive will be transformed with a bus lane in the rightmost lane. So there will be the existing bike lane that's separated by paint, and then there will be a lane for buses. And you'll hear from Jason Lawrence and Bruce Jones about how this is the next phase in CATS's efforts to redesign the bus network. So you can register for that. The registration is open at sustaincharlotte.org/events. It's free and open to the public, so we'd love to see you there. And I'd now like to pass it back to Mary Catherine, who will tell you a bit more about how you can support Sustain Charlotte if you appreciate events like the one we're hosting tonight.
Hi everyone, thanks for sticking with us. I really appreciate everybody just coming and really stacking hands on this issue of, protecting our tree canopy, and our air quality and our quality of life is all wrapped up in this. So just once again, thank you so much to our panelists. I want to invite you all into an opportunity right now. As Sustain Charlotte's Development Associate, I am very aware that COVID has had pretty drastic impacts for all of us, whether it's medical or physical or financial. But I'd really love if you are interested in supporting the issues that we've been talking about today, and you want to continue to champion, smart land use and sustainable growth in Charlotte. I would love to invite you to be a sustaining member. There's multiple ways that you can give to Sustain Charlotte, including making a one-time donation, signing up to become a monthly member, which means you give on a monthly basis. You can also reach out to your employer. We have a corporate giving program where we have different organizations and companies that are willing to partner with us. So maybe you can't give yourself, but your employer might be interested in becoming one of our corporate partners. One last thing, there are also a lot of organizations and companies that do employee match giving programs. And that's another really great way to give, because your employee and your employer matches the gifts that you give to us. So it's kind of a double the gift, double the win for everybody here. We are so grateful for those of you that are on the call that are already supporting us. And there's just truly no way that we could do the work that we're doing and continue to advocate for these kind of issues without the support of our committed partners. And we're so grateful for that. So Meg, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And just once again, thanks so much to all our incredible panelists and everybody that stuck around for this session.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight for Grow Smart CLT, and thank you again to everyone who participated, whether as an attendee or most especially our fantastic panel. And we really look forward to hearing from you about what you're doing to protect the tree canopy. So after I send that follow-up email tomorrow to everyone, please feel free to write back and keep us informed about your efforts to engage with protecting the tree canopy. We always love to hear how people act on the calls to action that are shared by our event panelists. So we hope to see you back here on October 7th for our Grow Smart event about the bus lanes on Central Avenue, as well as what CATS is doing to improve the bus network throughout the city. So I hope you have a great night and take care.
All right. Thank you, Meg.
Bye.
Great job.